we're talking with Miss Eleanor Enriquez, who is the coordinator for NARCY, formerly known as the Special Education Unit. And Eleanor and I have known each other for 3.5 years. And she's the first one I met when I walked in the door when I came down in January 3 years ago. And I know since that time I have seen changes in special education in Belize. But what I want to hear from Eleanor is what changes she has seen. But before we get into that, Eleanor, would you mind giving a brief background of your involvement in education in Belize and how you got to where you are right now?
It's a long story.
Well, make it short.
I started to work at the Stella Maris School, it's about, nearly about 30 years ago. As a teacher, actually, I was just, we can say, thrown into a classroom with children with physical and visual impairments. The first day of school, I really didn't know what to do, but I was told that I had to learn. The principal at that time was Sister Elsa. Sister Elsa came along and she gave me a little book, how to learn Braille. So that's my first introduction to teaching children with visual impairment. So I had to learn Braille, and then I had to learn, and as I go along, I teach the student that I had in my classroom. From there, I stayed. The first year was kind of tough, but then I stuck with it, and I got a scholarship to go abroad, go to Jamaica to study special education. Came back, I worked at Stella Maris, continued to work at Stella Maris. Then I left, I went to work in a regular primary school. It's in Hattieville, because I wanted to have the experience with working with other children also. And then went away again, did my first degree in Jamaica, came back, worked. Then I became principal at Stella Maris School. Went to Boston, not Boston, in Massachusetts, Amherst University of Massachusetts. That's where I got my master's degree in special ed. And I came back, went to work with the District Education Center in Belize City. And then I was transferred here, and here I am. So that's in a nutshell.
You have a longer history than I thought of when I asked that question.
Yeah.
So you certainly have seen a lot of changes. So anything that comes to mind in particular, it will just be one thing I know.
Yeah, it's a lot. From the ministries, working with the Ministry of Education, I knew that at first, when I first started to work, they thought that special education, or when anything that has to do with special education and special needs, it's only Stella Maris School. But that has changed as we are now seeing that they are beginning to accept that there are children in regular primary school that have special needs, and that there is need to address those needs in the regular primary school system, which is why one of the reasons why I think they established the special education unit at that time in 1991. But a lot has changed since that time. They started off with one person working as the special education unit. Now we have about 20 persons working in general. That is far from the numbers that we need, but it's getting there. It has changed. The public perception of children with special needs has also changed, in that there are more children and more parents wanting their children to come to attend school, to be enrolled in school, rather than having those children stay at home or placed in an institution somewhere. Teachers have also changed in that they are more accepting. Their attitudes have changed. At first they used to say, "Oh, I cannot do that. That is not my job. That's a job of people who are specialized in teaching children with special needs." But now that has also changed. A lot of teachers will tell you, "Well, I am willing to work with this child. Will you come in to help us?" And that is the attitude that we want to see change. That's what we want.
And as you look down the road, do you expect to see more positive changes like the ones that you just went over?
Yes. I believe that as we get more resources and we are able to give more support to the schools, and we are able to give more support to parents, the general attitudes of teachers and the parents will change. For for the better. So it will happen.
I know there's not one obstacle, but you can respond to as many as come to your mind. What obstacles do you see for special education or for children with special needs? What are the problems that you see for those children and for the teachers who are teaching them?
A major obstacle you can see right now is the lack of resources. But that is, we know that is an international thing. But that is a major thing. But we have been able to get along and being able to do a lot of things apart from, even without the resources. The other obstacle that I'm seeing is the influence of what would you say? The influence of things that are happening in the community on our students, on our children, and on the teachers. So that the teachers are not faced with only the special needs of those children, but there is also the other say environmental or social conditions that are impacting the children. There are children who now maybe have a learning problem, but they also have a learning plus some other social conditions, but the teacher now has to be able to work with, has to be able to maybe make referrals, and has to be able to deal with in the classrooms.
So in a way, the job is harder now than it was 15 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, much harder, much harder. Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and it's been wonderful working with you, and I look forward to my continuing to work with you. Take care.
Thank you, Bill.